Welcome to the Spiritual Leadership Podcast. My name is Alanna, and it is my pleasure and privilege to bring this work to you. I am responding today to a question from some students in my online community campus who wanted me to speak about imposter syndrome. What to do when it feels like you don't have what it takes to stand up and be a spiritual leader, whether that comes in the form of a yoga teacher, a reiki healer, massage therapist, tarot reader, astrologer, whatever you've got going on. If you ever feel like you are not in a place to tell anybody anything, then you are suffering from what we call imposter syndrome. Now, this is a really challenging problem. It's also a really complex problem, and it requires me to talk about a few different things. The first thing I want to talk about is simply confidence. Now, I've seen this in my yoga teacher training programs that I've been leading for over 20 years, that we can give people all of the knowledge that they need to actually just teach a yoga class, to lead people through an inhale upward dog, and exhale downward dog, and yet they feel a little paralyzed by it. They know what the technique is, but it's difficult for them to stand up and simply say the words, like, who am I to say this, but I need more practice. Well, I'm going to give you the very same advice that I was given by my most favorite professor in my doctoral program just before I began my dissertation work. He sat me down on a bench on our beautiful campus in Santa Barbara, California, and he looked at me and he said, "Alanna, finish." That was it. That was his advice. I'll say it again because it bears repeating. "Alanna, finish." And so I say the same thing to you, and I used to say this to my yoga students all the time, that you just need to get out there and teach. Just teach. Just do it. Just give your knowledge. Just do the work. Don't worry about the rest of it. I know it's easy to say, and trust me, I have a deep and personal understanding of anxiety. I understand. I know that feels like it holds us back sometimes. I know that fear holds us back. But what's more important than the anxiety and the fear is the work and the transformation that it produces. If we believe in the work that we do, if we believe in the transformation that it creates, then it is more important and more powerful than our anxiety and our reticence can ever be. And that makes sense to me. I hope it makes sense to you too, that you have benefited from the work that you want to put out there in some way. So if you're a yoga teacher, you yourself have benefited and transformed and changed as a result of yoga. As a Reiki healer, you transform because of Reiki. As an astrologer, as a tarot reader, whatever the work that you do is, it has profoundly impacted your life. And if you believe in the work, then it is your responsibility to just put the work out there. Without hesitation, without questioning yourself, without falling prey to your smallness, your anxiety, your doubt. Just do the work and believe in the work. And like my professor recommended to me, simply finish. So if you've gone through a yoga teacher training and you're scared of teaching, you just need to teach. If you've studied astrology and received your certification and you're worried about how to bring this work to people, just bring this work to people. It may not be perfect the first time that you do it. It may not even be perfect the second time or the 150th time that you do it, but it's perfect because you're bringing it to the person that needs it the most. That is at the heart of what we do, isn't it? Because it's not about us as individuals. When we're a spiritual leader, when we're a spiritual coach, when we do work like this, it's never about us as an individual. It's about the transformation and what we can bring to that other person through the work that we do. We seek to be a conduit. And it's okay if we stumble on our words, and it's okay if we mix up an inhale and an exhale, and it's okay if we need to practice a little bit. No problem. Just bring the work. Let the yoga do its job. Let the astrology do its job. Let the tarot do its job. Let the chakras do their healing, and simply open yourself up to transmit that to others, no matter at what level you can. The people who work with you, who sit in front of you, are exactly the students and clients that you need and who need you. There is a greater wisdom to whoever it is sitting in your office or in your yoga studio or wherever it is you happen to be online with you, right? Here I sit delivering this podcast and I have no idea who needs to hear this message right now. But I know in my heart of hearts that whoever needs to hear this message is listening. And so I'm doing my best to deliver it with some semblance of confidence and knowledge in order to make sure that this message gets across in the best way possible. So that really is the first step in my mind to overcoming imposter syndrome. It's really just doing it. It's really just getting over whatever the ego is putting up as obstacles or blocks. And I don't mean to diminish anyone's anxiety or fear around this. I really don't. I honor both of those things. I work with both of those things all of the time myself. It's just that we need to hold a higher vision and understanding that the work that we do is beyond that. It's bigger than our fear. It's bigger than our anxiety. It's bigger than our ego. And the amazing thing is that when we deliver this wisdom and this work to people, it goes through us first and then out. And so it heals us in the process. Every time we teach something, we ourselves are learning it again. Every time we deliver the work, it is working through us as well. So we are being healed through the process of our own healing and work with others. And that's another thing to really keep in mind, that in order to overcome some of our own challenges, blocks, judgments about ourselves, beliefs, we simply need to open up and do the work and move it through us. So we are healed in the process. The other thing I wanted to speak about in terms of imposter syndrome is actually education. There is a huge body of wisdom that really is needed to do the kind of work that we do. And I say this with ease and not to compound any anxiety, because I know the type of people that I work with, the type of people I'm sure are listening, are the kind who really love to be hyper-educated. I see this all the time in my community at alannak.com, that people not only have a yoga certification, they might have several. They don't just have a certification in yoga, they're also a massage therapist. They're also a certified astrologer. They're also a certified tarot reader. They've also studied reiki or mythology or psychology, whatever it is. They come to me with this vast body of knowledge because there's some idea, this sense that it is what's required for spiritual leadership. And that is true. That is absolutely true. That's something that I discovered very early on in my own career, more than 20 years ago. I became a certified yoga teacher at the 200-hour level, and I was able to lead people through yoga class. But boy, I was getting questions from people that went so far beyond my yoga training. And I had this sense that there's more that I need to know to truly serve my people to the best of my ability and to serve their highest good. Now, I felt pretty confident in my yoga teaching skills at the time, but I knew that there could be more. So I went and got my 300-hour teaching certificate so that I was a full 500-hour teacher. And I still felt like, wow, maybe it's not just this yoga stuff that I need to know in order to truly help people. And so I became an astrologer, and then I became a tarot reader, and then I went and studied psychology, and then I got my doctorate. I've written a few books on mythology. Now, I'm not saying that you have to study and learn and be and do all of those things. But I am saying with a certain amount of confidence that to really step into the work of spiritual leadership, a lot of education is needed. And the reason is because mystics and spiritual leaders of all time have had a tremendous body of knowledge. We are on some level done a disservice by 200 and 300 hour yoga teacher trainings. And I say this with caution because I lead those as well. But at some point in yoga's recent history here in the West, there was this consensus made by a group of people that decided, 200 hours is a good start. 300 hours is a better finish. Together, it's a 500 hours, and that's all that we need. And it should be 20 hours of anatomy and 10 hours of teaching methodology. And whatever system they set up about, I guess it was 20, 25 years ago, it's just stuck, and no one's really questioned it. But the work that we're asked to do as yoga teachers and spiritual leaders requires far more education. We're asked to essentially be spiritual therapists. And if we look historically at who spiritual therapists were, they were clergy members of any tradition, clergy members of any tradition. If you go and you get a degree in divination, this is a full 4-year master's program. This is not a 200-hour weekend course. And you're given therapeutic skills on the level of an actual therapist in order to do this work. We're done a disservice by these minimal standards that are offered by our current yoga community. Now, I would like to see that changed. I think that we rise to the level of master's degree and doctorates and things like that, but that is not yet the current educational structure of what we do. And so this is actually the reason why, if you look at my programs on alannak.com, why I have so many, because I know that it's not just yoga that is going to get you through the demands of your community, them asking you to step into the role of spiritual leadership, because there is this giant God-sized hole in our community, in our modern Western culture, because of, this is a little complicated, but because of the rise of the Industrial Revolution 150 years ago, our movement towards science, away from traditional religious practice, the rise of psychology, which basically omits spirit, that's the purpose of it. It is the science's answer to the mind. But people still have bigger questions, don't they? You know this, I know this. When I started teaching yoga all those years ago, people were not asking me which direction to point their big toe. They were asking me what their purpose in life was. What is the meaning of all of it? What do I do about my relationship? Is this the right career for me? You don't get experience on how to answer those questions in just a yoga teacher training. You can lead great yoga. You can help people with their anxiety and depression through pranayama and meditation. And it's great for a lot of things, but yoga is not a silver bullet. And I don't care how many yoga teacher trainings you do, it's not going to prepare you for the role of spiritual leadership that you are being called to by your community because they desperately need it. Just because statistically in growing numbers, people are walking away from their native religious and spiritual traditions doesn't mean they don't still need answers to those questions. They do. And because the traditional structure of education doesn't exist for us to become spiritual leaders and have a master's behind our name, doesn't mean we don't need to get the education required. So if we look historically at what spiritual leaders, mystery schools have trained people to do, they've always had a healing tradition. And for us, as modern day mystics and spiritual leaders, our healing tradition is through the chakras. The chakras provide a spiritual psychology template for how to structure and understand the psyche and heal it from the inside out. It goes beyond the Western medical practice, which simply looks at the body, and it goes beyond the practice of psychology, which only isolates the mind. Chakras are our spiritual psychology, and we need deep understanding of them in order to truly work with a person holistically outside of Western medicine and beyond psychology in order to occupy this really unique and special third lane that you and I do, which is spiritual leadership. Okay, so we have the tradition of the chakras, which we need a deep understanding of. We'll need a method of divination because anyone who comes to us has a problem. Otherwise, they wouldn't come to us. They would go on about their day. So if they have a problem they need an answer to, traditionally, if we look to the mystics and how they got those quick answers, it was through divination. But we need a form of divination that works for the modern Western psyche. Runes worked great for the Vikings, but for us, it is the tarot deck. The tarot deck was specifically designed for the modern Western psyche with the myths and symbols that are already embedded in our consciousness. That's how we get our quick answers. If we look to mystics of all time, they have always had a form of astrology. Astrology is spiritual psychology. The Egyptians had an astrology. The Greeks had an astrology. The Babylonians had an astrology. So do we. I was born in the West. I primarily work with Western students, and so I study and teach Western astrology. Oh, I know I can hear the objections, but Alanna, you've been so steeped in the yoga tradition. Don't you teach and study Vedic astrology? Vedic astrology is for the Eastern psyche. It speaks to the things that are important and embedded within the Eastern psyche, which there's no good or bad here. They are just different. It's just a different emphasis. So no, I don't. I am a Westerner. I work with Westerners. And so I teach and study and practice Western astrology because that emphasizes what is important and alive in the Western psyche. That's how we find the habits, patterns, and tendencies of the people that we work with so that we can support them in manifesting the absolute best and highest potential of who they are. And I've studied psychology, and I've studied alchemy, and I've studied ritual, and I have a doctorate in mythology. But if we look to what a spiritual leader needs, if we look to what you need, it is actually a broad education in what the mystics have always known. That physical practice, that healing practice, those things that we can do every day like pranayama, breathwork, meditation that we get from yoga. The spiritual psychology of an astrology practice that works for who we're working with. A method of divination that speaks to the time and place that we're in. A method of healing practice so that we can listen holistically to the person and what they need. Chakras, astrology, tarot. It's not just about yoga. So if you feel at all unequipped to answer these challenging questions that we get every day from students, what is my meaning? What is my purpose? What do I do? What am I doing? Then it might be time to expand your education and your repertoire and your skill set and add some of these additional pieces in. Now, I do offer certifications and training and all of these things because I know that this is what you need, but it doesn't have to be from me. You can study them from anybody or on any level that you wish. But understand that right now, the structure of what is acceptable in training for a yoga teacher, it's just not comprehensive enough to really give people what they are needing, which is spiritual leadership, which goes beyond just the yoga practice. If you are getting these bigger questions from people, then not only do I want you to deliver the information you have now with confidence because they need it, I want you to go ahead and get the education necessary to have all the tools you need to bring them to their greatest, highest transformation possible. Because that's why you and I are here. You're being called to this work. I know that because you're here with me. I know that because you're listening. There's no doubt in my mind that if you are hearing this message on some level, you need it. And I'm very grateful for that. So again, wherever it is you get the education, however it is you get the education, make sure that you have what you need to help people with their greatest transformation and to help them step into the greatest possible manifestation of who they can be in this lifetime. That's how we move into confidence. That's how we release any anxiety of, oh gosh, I'm not sure if I know this. So, and the answer to how do we overcome imposter syndrome, number one, we simply do the work. We let the work move through us. And number two, we make sure that we have the education that we need to give people what it is they seek, which is spiritual transformation and guidance. So with that, if you have any questions or need any more education and training, don't hesitate to go to my website, alannak.com, and join my online community where we have so many people just like you working on this issue, answering these questions, solving these problems for people, providing spiritual leadership and guidance. And of course, I do also offer a spiritual coaching certification program, which teaches you exactly how to do this work. It's all on my website, alannak.com. Thank you so much for being here and listening to this podcast. I am deeply grateful for you and for the work that you're doing. Until next time, please take care of yourselves and take care of each other.